Hi, Sachin.
Hi, Dinkar.
So, in the last one, we thought that we'll discuss the topic of assets and products even more. So, I think let's spend as much time as needed on assets.
Absolutely. And last thing, what we left with is we wanted to know how any enterprise can discover assets within their organization. So the first step for even discovering assets is that how to identify what to assetize.
Right.
Do you have a certain thought process around that in terms of when do you convert something to asset and when you convert something to not an asset, but let's say a playbook or something like that?
Right. So, let me first call out what a non-asset could be, at least in the context of this conversation, right? We already established we are not discussing products. That's a
No.
separate thing. Now, within the organization, all of us have these personal efficiency tools, things we do to make ourselves efficient, and many times we share them with few more folks, and because they are useful for other people who are in the similar scenario, and some of them have the scope of being used by some other set of folks in in the organization, who may have the context of why you built it, who built it, or
Yes.
they may not have that context, right? And therein, something which was a utility for a small set of users shows the promise of becoming an asset. So I think assets, I see that assets have five characteristics, right? And probably we can discuss each one of them. The first one, the most common one, I think, is assets should encode knowledge. What I mean by that is, people don't like discussing it, but people leave organizations. You and I have left organizations. We may switch that in future, right? And what becomes very important is that we leave something behind, which takes our place. And I think that if we start encoding knowledge that people have, it is a very good practice. And the most common form of doing that is document, right? Document your code, write a separate document, create a video, create a presentation, and kind of share your knowledge that way, right? But the key difference between an asset and sharing a knowledge is that sharing a knowledge implies that I will explain something and someone will understand, and then they will make it a part of their day-to-day working, right? What asset can do is that it can encode this knowledge into something which is eminently reusable, but someone may want to, but they don't have to learn everything about it, what it encoded, how it encoded, what was the learning, and they can just start using this and produce output which is at the same level as someone who understood it very well, had quote unquote done doctorate on that subject, right? So encoding of
Absolutely.
knowledge becomes very important there.
Yeah. Um, Absolutely. And you had other characteristics, right? Yes.
Right. Yeah. So, that was around encoding the knowledge. The next one was again something very common, and I think something that excites the managers a lot is it should encode some form of efficiency or effectiveness. All right. So,
Basically, process.
yeah. So one thing I want to call out is that the heading probably is how to discover assets in your ways of working, right? So
Hmm.
what it implies is that what we're trying to capture is in your ways of working, what are the things, and what may happen is that let's say this organization is creating two products,
Correct.
and team A has come up with some way of doing something faster. Now, a typical approach would be quote unquote knowledge sharing if that happens in that organization. And let's say this is what we do, and then next set of organization team, they listen, they understand, they have a discussion, they create their own version of it. There is, in some ways, time that gets utilized, which probably can be avoided if there is a way to encode that efficient way of doing something in form of a tool, an accelerator, a framework, a document, all the kind, and tell the team be, hey, you know what, follow these instructions and things will happen, right? And that is very critical, right? That this is beyond knowledge sharing, right? It does not require the other teams to spend time understanding what you're doing, but if they follow the instructions, if they follow the tool, if they do what has been told without having to apply themselves, and bunch of people, they just copy, replicate, and they inherit on the efficiencies that was coming in. That's the second one. Third one is very interesting. I like comprehensiveness, right? It encodes comprehensiveness. What I mean by that is, let's say an organization, a large enterprise has three engineering managers, and one engineering manager has 20 years of experience, one engineering manager has 10 years of experience, another one has some years of experience. All of them have come from different backgrounds. They have faced different kind of complexities in their careers. They have solved different kind of problems, and we carry our learnings with us. What we don't realize is sometimes when we carry our learnings with us like this, our ways of working have been shaped by the problems we have faced or the good practices we have seen. But that does not mean that the problems that we have seen or the good practices we have adopted are the complete set of problems anyone would have faced, or complete set of, right? But if you combine these three set of folks, and you kind of combine their experiences, you combine their lessons learned, and now each one of them would be, instead of one, 2 plus 2 plus 2 6, they would be probably 2 plus 2 4 to 8, right? Maybe I should have picked some better number which kind of shows the scale between
Yeah,
just
but Dinkar,
adding
your
them.
point is
Yeah.
Dinkar, your point is absolutely valid, and I echo that feeling. Many times when there are documents, let's say that, and going back to your 3 points, which is knowledge, efficiency, effectiveness, and comprehensiveness, there will be different experiences, different leaders, and different people across your organizations will accumulate over the period of time when they are building something, when they are actually working with the customers, and they are searching for place to contribute this knowledge in a living form.
Right.
When it is a document is rarely a living form. It is something which you go as knowledge repository, but it is not something which is practiced, which is used, which is on a regular basis. And the beauty of asset is that it is practiced, it is used. So I am evolving it. It is living, breathing thing. So when I am gathering new experiences, or let's say there is a change in terms of some parameters which are external to me, now those can get contributed back into the system, rather than we thinking, hey, let me just accumulate enough knowledge so that I can go and update that document and make version 2.0.
Right. And the advantage it brings is that it brings scale, right?
Yeah.
You learn something, you encode it. Now it's available to everyone, and it's available to everyone historically in old users, new users, and the way it spreads, right? Otherwise, in case of knowledge, large enterprise have a huge effort. They spend a lot of time in evangelism, right,
Correct.
of this new practice. Then they will do internal marketing. They will put it up on internal intranet pages, and they will do videos around it, and they will go and talk to people. It becomes an effort to push this knowledge to everyone else, and then probably they'll create a TikTok version of that interesting learning, so people watch it, right? But once it has been encoded in the tool has learned it, and it's comes becomes part of what you're doing, right? And therein comes the most original form of an asset, that is, it can codes repeatability, right? The whole code reuse, how it started was that I'm doing the same thing over and over and over again. Let me create a function out of it. Let me create a library out of it. So I don't have to recreate that code over and over again. Bring that thought process to practices also, right? So I'm doing the same set of activities over and over again. Everyone is going to do that over and over again. Can we just encode it in some tools so everyone does not have to spend 2 3 hours doing the same thing, and they just and finally, the fifth one is it encodes usability. What I mean by this is, and Sachin, I'll kind of draw on some experiences you and I have in our workplaces. A lot of people have these awesome tools, which are, there's some open source tools, are awesome, very useful, written in Python. Now I have to learn Python. Like, yeah, maybe it's a good driver to learn it, but now I have to learn it, then I have to install it, then I have to use it, then I have to figure out what went wrong, and there's such a learning curve for those things, right? If this is such a useful thing, maybe you can invest some time, put a wrapper around it, which makes it usable for a larger audience, not just Python geeks. And now what you have done is you have taken some very specialized piece, some very useful piece, and you have made it available for others to use who otherwise did not have the capability of using it, but would have benefited from these kind of tools, right? So these are the
Absolutely.
five ones. I'll quickly recap, and then I'll kind of we'll go one by one and hear your thoughts on it. Encode knowledge, encode efficiency and effectiveness, encode comprehensiveness, encode repeatability, and encode usability. So, Sachin, I'll go one by one. So, encodes knowledge. What's your experience around it? What kind of recommendations do you have there?
There is I mean, every organization, whenever they are working on something, whether it is designing, whether it is delivering, whether it is providing some services to somebody, they are creating these new ways of operating, achieving efficiencies, or making a differentiation from themselves to their competition. I was watching a movie, Founders, which is about McDonald's history, and the point was that two people who created this process of how to deliver burger fast, and that was the most unique process or the asset what they actually had. But they did not limit themselves to that. They devised working stations, cutting boards, frying stations, packing stations, all those things, and they trained people in doing that. But what did they achieve is that there is this process in which you can create a burger and deliver it in 60 seconds, and that was the best thing to differentiate from the competition. Now, you can think about the similar approach, and what you beautifully laid out is, I'm talking about culmination of all of that.
Right, right.
When you are thinking about it, these are components which you spoke, and you need to think, what is the efficiency factor which I can extract out of it? What is the comprehensiveness factor which I can extract out of it? But to package all of it, you have to have a very solid product thinking. Packaging attitude is like this: I can take some bit of knowledge which is unique to us, some bit of efficiencies which I have created over my 10 years of working with this set of customers. By the way, I like this output in certain fashion. I like these type of details to be provided to my customer, and here is the comprehensiveness which I achieve, and that's what my customers like. Couple of financial advisors with whom I worked, they were beautiful in their report. I do not know how good they are at the financial advice, but when they produce that report, which is their outcome,
You'll know in few years when your investment tank or go up. Yeah.
but the best part about their business is, Dinkar, uh, I don't need to know how good they are today. I decide based on the outcome of the report,
Yeah.
not actually their track record, right? Obviously, the track record matters, but the track record is based on past data, and financial markets, it doesn't work that way. So without
At least you
digression,
got a good report out of it.
yeah, I got a good report, and that comprehensiveness actually matters.
Right.
um, it is really critical that how you present your information to your people. And your reusability and usability hit me really hard. Without a very solid approach of product thinking, it is so difficult to think about, hey, what portion needs to be packaged so that this is a unit which needs to be repeated over and over and over and over again, and still make it generic enough that rest of your organization can contribute to this innovation.
Yeah.
They can actually make it more wide reaching. If let's say you create only one asset, this is my whole uh, distillation of my organizational practice, then it is not a great idea. But
Right.
maybe you want to create these smaller units which are lego blocks for your business to assetize, and then you don't need to assetize everything.
Right.
You can actually asset things which are highest impact and least amount of effort in the beginning, and then you can go more and more comprehensiveness from that. Usability is, I mean, hard hitting to me, to be very honest. Many times people are creating things in the wild, uh, which is their point of view, but they are not paying so much attention to how this is going to be easy for people to consume. Today, Dinkar, the biggest problem I see, personally, I'm feeling this as well, is there is so much cognitive load on me.
Hmm.
And if for adoption of an asset, I need to read 40 pages PDF
Hmm.
and then spend, let's say, a 2 day specific dedicated to practice how to do that, I think I will have little
The
hard
purpose
time to
is
adopt
lost.
to that assets.
Yeah. And that kind of leads to another very interesting set of questions that I'm happy you brought the aspect of product thinking is uh, how do you choose what asset to invest in, what part of ways of working to actually go and assetize. How do you choose when is enough? um, you don't want to throw 500 assets at a team of 10 people and say go choose between them or use all of them, right? And that's where the outcome driven thinking becomes very important, right?
Yes.
um, have some principles of your organization. If you are a product organization, uh, putting out a product, if let's say you're a SaaS product, putting out a feature as fast as possible is a very important um, goal for the engineering team, for example. Like this, different organizations have different kind of goals, right? And then then go see that if I bring this kind of asset, it encodes knowledge A, and another asset encodes on knowledge B. Knowledge B is on critical path for me to push new features and capabilities out in the market faster. So obviously go and prioritize encoding of knowledge B, build an asset around that, right? So prioritization and not creating a deluge of assets becomes very important. And the best way to prioritize is usually not. One of my pet worry is this low hanging fruit syndrome, right? So many times developers, product managers will think, oh, this feature is small. It takes few minutes to do it. It's sufficiently useful. It's a low hanging fruit. Let's implement it. Nothing in world is low hanging. It's an illusion of low, because okay, it may be a small effort for the developer, but for the person who's going to test it, the team which is going to put into the production, the team which has to support it, the team that has to do a SecOps review of it, all those teams, it is still work, similar amount of work, right? Then it goes out. Now you have a piece of functionality out in the market which has sufficient value, But tomorrow it could lead to a bug. Tomorrow it could lead to request for refinement. You have added, in some way, a debt now. For why? Because at the time of development, at that moment, you felt it's a low hanging fruit, right? So prioritization that, hey, this is easy to implement. Let's implement this asset first. No, it's a low hanging fruit, it's low effort, it gives sufficient output. No, these are quote unquote project or efficiency or a very narrow view of prioritization. The prioritization should be, this is our goal. Does this asset put us on a better path towards that goal? Yes, go for it. Now that bunch of those you have, if within those bunch of those you want to go A versus B based on some prioritization around the complexity or something, I'll still understand. That should be the second or the third factor in your prioritization, not the first one. First one should never be, it's faster, quicker, less complicated, low hanging fruit. First should be, does it give me that value? Yes, 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 yes. All those that give you that value, first go and focus on that. And that's where this outcome driven thinking, product thinking becomes very important, when someone is looking at all the possibilities in your ways of working, where what you can assetize and say that, let me hold on to that, let me add it to my backlog, and when the right moment is there, I'll have something ready. So I think having that clear view of the goal of the organization, and then be able to analyze that this asset puts me on a fast track to achieving that goal, should be the prioritization, and not this team likes this technology. We should know, many times I've seen, oh, the team is interested in learning these kind of technology, so we thought of this asset we'll build using this technology, and we'll have two birds one stone. No, you have actually created a weight of four stones in your final, because now you have to maintain it and so on and so forth.
I completely believe in that philosophy of not actually thinking about just automating for the sake of it or because it is easier. It's a very tactical view of getting something done. What I also see is that technology industry has been good at creating assets. They just didn't know they are creating assets, or they don't advertise it as assets. They think of this as internal tools. They think of this as, oh, I wrote a library. If you think one of the greatest set of inventions came out of this product thinking, there is a problem. But people, the really great products which were internal and they became external, they were not created because of what you just mentioned, is the quick win type of
Yeah.
thinking. It was linked fundamentally to their strategy or how they want to make a differentiation. AWS is a great example. Amazon Web Services was an internal product at some point in time. They were creating it for themselves because they felt this is going to provide them strategic advantage. And
Right.
when they started doing it, at some point of time, they felt, but the world can benefit from it.
Yeah.
And it can be a good business opportunity for us.
Yeah.
Or Kubernetes was an internal tool. And that was actually brought out to the world. And we know this. I mean, like everybody is now talking about Kubernetes. It's
Yeah.
ubiquitous.
Yeah. And maybe that's another topic on, once you have identified these assets and you are using them, what kind of lens to put on them, and say that, hey, you know what, these two assets, probably they can be productized. We can put revenue model around it, and we can identify a target set of target and go sell to them. This is again fundamentally the same thought process that I called out in the earliest round, right? You have something, couple of more users found it useful, you shared with them, more people found it useful who have no context of why and how it was built. They just found the outcome useful, and within the organization, and at some point someone will think, you know what, I came from that organization, if I had something like this, I would have found it useful. And you kind of package it into something legal, and with the revenue model on top of it, put it out there, spin it off as a separate organization, or making part of your product list, go sell it to others. It's the same thought process going over and over again iteratively.
And Dinkar, whenever people think about, hey, I want to create an asset, I want to request them, do not think about big things. Do
Yes.
not try to pack a lot of value until that it is not a viable thing. I'll give you a very simple example. I was reading this book, The McKinsey Mind, and
Mm,
in that book there is a chapter about waterfall chart.
mm,
And I don't even still see it in many places. But what McKinsey, I don't know who created it. There is a name given in that book, but the fellow who created set of charts for McKinsey, it was actually institutionalized. That
yes.
these are the charts, these are the stencils, these are the colors, these are how you present it. This is a great
Uh,
asset,
yeah.
and they did it so that all McKinsey charts look in a certain fashion. And this waterfall chart was something which was new. It didn't exist. Can you believe it could be a visualization, and that creates market differentiation?
Yes.
And they did it. And what you need to think about it is, not everything has to be a coded tool.
Yes.
uh, Asset is something which fits into the five criteria which you mentioned. That thing provides you some very unique value. And as you mentioned, it should be rather than bottom up of, okay, what can I just quickly convert into an asset? It should be why I need to actually do something, what is unique thing for me, and how I can package it so that I can make it accessible to a wider audience in my company and create that differentiation. I think that is fundamental thinking. It's the other way around they have to go. And this is a difficult part about also asset based thinking, is you cannot just say, uh, identify all the common things, create that into asset. I mean, that will be a very wrong strategy to go about creating an asset catalog.
Yeah. That won't take you anywhere, and you'll have now a burden of things you have published and publicized, and you have to maintain it with no takers if you take that approach. And I'm very happy you called out that asset need not always be piece of code, and it's a trap to think
Yeah.
that asset means I have to bunch of developers are needed, right? No. And that's why, encoding knowledge, it could be set of just a decision tree. You gave the idea a very good example of visualization, right? So it's very important for all of us to keep in mind is that there are different ways of delivering value in an organization. Techies, we post technical people and technical people think that the code is the only way of transferring value from A to B. From I am creating something valuable to the organization by writing the code. No, there are so many other things of doing it right. Uh, so I think assets are again something very tangible way of doing that, and I hope more and more people do that. The other thing around assets that often comes up when you are looking at these prioritization, and this is little counterintuitive to product thinking, is in your prioritization, if you noticed, I never mentioned the cost of building the asset and the ROI of the asset, right? I don't think that we should start with that thought process with the asset. And that's why when an asset is encoding knowledge, it is bringing comprehensiveness to your ways of working, it's making more kind of capabilities usable to people who do not have those kind of capabilities. It's talking about repeatability. You at that early on, till they have proven themselves as being true, the hypothesis of the asset has been proven itself, prematurely trying to pick some model, figuring out what is the ROI of it in dollar terms, I think can be a disservice. Some of useful assets may drop because the person who created that asset, or the person who advocated for that asset, or the team, that wanted to saw the value in that asset may or may not have all the analysis or chops to come up with dollar analysis of that upfront. So I think every organization should have an almost like an adoption cycle of an asset within their organization. They should allow
Absolutely.
they should allow anyone and everyone to propose an asset, maybe even do things on their side to create an asset, find set of users, see that it is helping others, see that it is helping others who have no context of why it was built, how it was built. They just love the outcome of it. Let it spread, and only when it needs some serious investment, at that time look at the spread, look at the value it has brought, talk to the people it has brought value to, and at that time probably do some kind of bets and value cost benefit analysis. So I think it's very important to let an asset marinate for some time till it reveals its possibilities, or reveals that maybe the larger it was a good idea, it served set of people, but maybe it's not something that all of the organization needs.
Absolutely. And one thing which I would like to go a little bit further as well is when you create asset catalog of things which you are maintaining in your organization, the biggest problem which you will face is the obsolescence of these assets. Some of these assets are not relevant. Some of these assets are actually outdated. Some of these assets have not been as successful as you want. There as well, that product thinking is extremely important to cut off the things which are not valuable to you, because I mean, like, you have to follow the principle of body, right? Is you went to gym, it was a phase, you built huge set of muscles on your body, and then if you are not using those muscles, then body starts shedding them so that it can conserve itself at an optimal energy consumption. So similar principle applies here. Is you cannot just think of this asset catalog and it's a pile of things. As it grows, my pride grows in it. You should think about what is absolutely critical, essential, and be ruthless about maintenance of it. Things
Right.
which are getting used, evolve them faster. Things which are not working out for you, cut them as fast as possible. I think the couple of times you spoke about the fail fast mentality. Is you identify what is not working as soon as possible and then cut it off, or improve it, or change your approach, build something new. So this is a continuous process. You cannot just actually say every year I'll figure out what assets I want to build next year.
Yeah.
You have to be vigilant about where the possibilities are, what I want to do, and how I want to grow from here. So uh, and I keep going back to product thinking, although you are expert at it. It's I I seriously feel that it is a skill which needs to be honed and mastered.
Yeah.
You need to be able to think about it's like a difference between a blogger and a writer, right? A blogger can actually blog about anything what is top of their mind, and that's, I would say, is like that quick win thinking, right? A topic came to my mind, I had something to say, I expressed myself, low cost of actually getting to market and audience. I did my job, I feel good about it. But writers are the ones who say, here are these 10 ideas, and these 10 ideas form one big like pile of ideas, and then this is a very comprehensive thing, and I can now bundle these into a bigger point, and that point goes to my audience. That's product thinking to me. Is you are not thinking in isolation, you are not thinking about these quick wins, you are not thinking. And when these writers actually go out and write even a forward for somebody else,
Hmm.
look at how concise and effective they are. So not every asset needs to be 200-page book.
Right.
It can be a simple 2-page forward as well. So I'm thinking the spectrum is very wide for assets. The critical part is, what is an asset? That definition in your mind, what you want to convert, and then how you want to take it to the market. So that's all it matters.
Right. I think the organization should be very clear on that. One thing that on fail fast, one thing that I always think is that every asset should be auto delete. Means if it doesn't meet this kind of criteria in this period of time, it just deletes. It's no longer useful. It served its use. Otherwise, you cannot say, oh, we have built it, let it be there, maybe someone will need it. It's then becomes a burden to maintain it. It becomes a security infosec risk at some point. So part of product thinking, and today I was talking to a set of folks, is that we think of measure of success, but we don't like to think of measure of failure. We think about a product development, we don't think about product sunset. We have to think of all those things. There's one more fallacy that I've want to call out, is that creating assets is not um, responsibility of a team. You cannot have, oh, we will have an assets team. You cannot have that, oh, we will have an innovation team and they will innovate. We will have an assets team. These assets, because they are encoding ways of working, that means the people who are doing that work would be the best candidate, right? You may probably have some kind of central team which is cataloging and bringing it together, giving them guidance. That probably makes sense. You may have some team which is on hyperdrive and has a lot of experience and are churning, are in that creative mode, and they're churning for certain period of time, lot of assets. But that's not the right way of encoding the whole ways of working, as creating those assets. You need it to be a democratic contribution. Everyone should contribute. So I think these two things add up into how an organization should decide what an asset is, prioritize those assets, encourage everyone to come up with these assets, and know when to say bye bye to an asset. You had a good run. It's not you, it's me, and kind of RM minus RM.
Absolutely. I mean, plus 100 to that. It is very critical. And I was alluding to that point earlier as well. Thanks for bringing that clarity into it. Is uh, you cannot just think about maintaining an infinite assets catalog.
Right.
That is not healthy, that is not practical, that is not feasible as well for your any size team. First of all, you just rightly called out, you cannot actually think about assets as a team. Yeah, there are always people who are librarians, there are always people who are actually guiding principles, there are people who are defining a process, there are people who are shepherding it. But you cannot think about that only 10 people in my company are responsible to create assets.
Yeah.
That a famous quote from Ratatouille, right, is Chef Gusteau says that anybody can cook, but towards the end of the movie, he realizes that like a cook can come from anywhere, a chef can come from anywhere. It's not that everybody can cook. So the assets can come from any part of your organization. But what you should think about is you should allow that process to evolve, allow people to create and contribute and evolve them.
Yeah, maybe one of the future discussions could be that, hey, how to know that which assets can be taken out to the market, what are the things to keep in mind there. And one of the things that I think we should discuss, and in my mind, I have not really solved this problem, is you have this catalog and you have an organization which is spread across, you have 1 lakh, 2 lakh, 100,000, 200,000 employees. You're spread globally, different, massive enterprises, right? How do you improve the discoverability of assets within the organization? It will be an interesting topic we can discuss, and would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So till then, Sachin, see you. Bye
Thank you
bye.
so much.
Yeah.